I can totally see us still doing hybrid events this time next year, but we just got to do them for the right reasons. There have to be the right questions asked as to why we're doing hybrid, other than it's just what we do now. That's not the right reason in my view. I think we have to ask the right questions.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Conference Call. I'm Martin Fullard, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Orchard, Director of Business Development at Anna Valley. How are you, Dan?
Hello, yes, I'm good, thank you. Very good. I've got my tea, so I'm prepared today.
Oh, that's grand, good. I just finished my coffee. Foolishly, I forgot to get one ready for the interview. But no matter, we will persevere. Hopefully, I won't start coughing of dehydration. Now, let's talk shop. Event organisers during the pandemic really found themselves all at sea, having been forced to kind of look at virtual alternatives because they were no longer allowed to run their in-person events. And what became apparent is that many of them lacked those virtual skills. And as a result, they just sort of had to get by functionally, I suppose. Do you think creativity took a back seat as a result during the pandemic through the context of virtual events?
Yes. That's the simple answer, but I'll elaborate because that would be a very boring thing to say. But so we've all had to educate ourselves an awful lot. It's not just event organisers. And we're the same, as an AV provider. We've been doing webcasting of events for a long time, which was a lot simpler back then because all the onus and the budget was on the sort of primary main event with the people in the room. And all of a sudden that, we could only produce these events online. And I think there was a big sort of amount of time right at the beginning when everything sort of dropped off the cliff and people were saying, how do we do this? And then it was more about how can we do it in a sort of a process and a function rather than, let's get creative. It's a scary thing when you're dipping into that for the first time. How do you sort of put something online if you've never done it before? You want to make sure the process is solid, the platform is solid, and you're getting out to that audience in the most robust way. And then the creativity sort of took a backstage, I think, for a while. But it's coming back. It's definitely coming back. It started coming back last year. A lot of the different ways of producing virtual really sort of came into their own at a point. People recognized, the value in it as well. Different ways of engaging people, different ways of making content more compelling. I think people are investing more in it now, but we're in a different transition period now of coming back to live. So that's a new point of turning everything around again. So
absolutely. And I think on that note, as we emerge from the pandemic, organisers, in some cases are looking to maintain that virtual element. And we use the word hybrid, but let's be honest, an event is an event, whether it has a digital or element or not. But do you see this sort of more blended approach enduring, considering there is a squeeze on budgets? And I'll prompt you there a little bit. In some cases, we're hearing that corporates are being told, look, you can have a live or a virtual. We can't afford both. But broadly speaking, that's sort of through the context of these big TV type productions. Not every event needs that. But I mean, surely it seems a bit strange to just go back without any sort of virtual element at all, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right. You can't just have one or the other at the moment. There's a big transition going on. I'm pleased to say that we are doing events that are purely live, which is great, and we love that. But a lot of brands, I'll talk about the brands rather than the agencies that are obviously putting their events together and the production teams that we work for. A lot of brands are still not confident enough to be sort of bringing the same sort of audiences back to engage with their brand, which is fair enough. We've had sort of over 18 months now of some really scary situations. I do understand that as much as we want to get back to live, but there is a happy medium, I think, in hybrid, and I do think it'll endure for a while. I can totally see us still doing hybrid events this time next year, but we just got to do them for the right reasons. There have to be the right questions asked as to why we're doing hybrid, other than it's just what we do now. That's not the right reason in my view. I think we have to ask the right questions. Is it benefiting the event? Do people want that? And is the budget being apportioned correctly into hybrid or live? That's going to be the balance for brands and agencies. And I suppose it's going to be our remit really to advise properly on what can be done with that, and how the budget can be spent on AV tech, to make the experience, worthwhile for both audiences, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole question about budgets is so key. But I wonder, though, this is the thing, and I speak to a lot of event organisers and a lot of people in your position too. And I think, are we barking up the wrong tree by assuming that we've got to treat in-person and virtual audiences as one and the same in terms of, experience? And I guess, you can watch football on TV, and, you can have all the replays and the commentary and the punditry before and after, and you're bombarded with graphics. And that's your kind of at-home audience. They're not there in the stadium. The other audience is there in the stadium. They get none of that, no commentary, no punditry, nothing like that, but they're living and breathing it. Those two audiences are treated the same. I guess really, what are the kind of key differences that we need to maybe bear in mind and understand how we treat people?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the sports analogy is totally right. That, watching it live in the stadium, you get that buzz, and that sort of atmosphere, but you're sort of at the side of the pitch watching the action. Whereas watching it at home, you get all the action replays and all that really good content. I suppose in a live event, you've got to treat it differently now. It was the only format you could produce it, this time last year. Well, maybe a bit earlier. We were just coming out, sort of peaking out, but and then went back in again for a bit. But we do have to. I sort of say this to people, like, it sounds a bit flippant, but my wife's a vegetarian, and we get all this sort of meat-free sausages and all that kind of thing, and it's. So I say, why do they trying to make it taste like meat? You just embrace that it's not meat and make it taste like something else. Don't try and make it be meat. And I suppose it's the same way with hybrid. Don't try and make that online experience the same as the live experience. It's never going to be. And I say that with no disrespect to the agencies that are sort of creating these experiences. That obviously we support, because they do a fantastic job, but you're never going to be able to get that experience of being in the room. So let's embrace the fact that it's online, and use some of the techniques that we can bring to that to make it a different experience, so that people are going to get the best out of it, because you're not going to get the best out of an online experience if you're trying to make it as if you're in the room, because you're just not.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you, what do we sort of mean then by hybrid? I mean, we mentioned these big TV style broadcasts, and they can be wonderful, but you don't need that every time. It can be streaming, but it can be post event material too, can't it? You are reaching an audience, not necessarily in real time. That content could endure. Technically, that could be hybrid too, couldn't it?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I can bring another food analogy in here, but I'm not going to bother. I've done that. Yeah, exactly. And hybrid is a weird thing. I think there's so many new phrases that came out last year. And I have a love-hate relationship with all that stuff. It's like Brexit and all that, super cold, as we were talking about earlier, all that sort of phrasing that comes out, and you end up embracing it and using it. And I suppose hybrid is one of those phrases that it's something that people use all the time. It's sort of a buzzword, but it does mean so many things. Clients that I speak to that come from the States, hybrid means something different to them over there. So hybrid for people in the sort of American market or North American market is a virtual event with a live presenter on a stage quite often. Whereas over here, we talk about a virtual event with an audience or a small audience. That's what a hybrid event means to us. And so, we do have to end up defining that quite a lot with people. So what do you mean by hybrid? What do you want out of that? And we always go back to the same question. What do you want to get out of it? Is it that you want people to engage physically and online? Is it that you just want that live element of a presenter on a stage bringing up content? What is it you're getting out of it? How are people engaging with the brand? What do they want to see? What do you want to show them? And you've got to define that before you even start. Whereas you never used to have to do that with a live event. It sort of speaks for itself.
Absolutely. And speaking of live events, then, in a sentence, I understand you guys have got an event happening at the end of January. Is that right?
Yeah. So we used to do this every year in January to sort of kickstart the year off, and it's sort of about putting our money where our mouth is, and in saying, look, we're creative, we want to inspire you with ideas, and instead of just telling you, we're going to show you. So we sort of put together anything weird and wacky and crazy that we can, and we build experiences with tech. We call it the Inspiration Showcase, and the idea is that you sort of come and be inspired, and it gives you that sort of little black book of ideas for the year. And sadly, we haven't been able to do it for the last 2 years. The last one we did was Jan 2020. So we are super excited. We're going to put it on in Jan with one of our new venue partners, Tobacco Dock. We're hosting it there, and we're putting on some pretty exciting things. We've sort of bottled up all that energy for the last 18 months, and it's going to be great. So yeah, we love to see agencies and brands and event organizers, producers come down and see what's possible at the moment, and hopefully show people how we can sort of get more of that hybrid in. So I'm going to keep talking about that because I'm very excited.
You sound exciting. Tobacco Dock, great venue for it as well. So thanks, Dan. Really insightful stuff. What we'll do, folks, is we'll pop a link to that events registration website in the comment section of this video. Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.